Ugh. Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. Welcome back. Right off the bat, I'm going to point out if I sound a little congested in this video, I don't know if I will or won't, but it's because I woke up this morning with a cold because someone in my family decided to prove their love to me by saying, "Here, catch my germs." So, yeah, my nose is a little stuffy. You may see me blow my nose at a couple points, maybe cough, I don't know, or tear up out of nowhere. But I wanted to get this video done because I was like, dude, Dracula, Friday the 13th, and Valentine's Day. This is perfect. This is the perfect time to get this done. I gotta get this done. So don't mind me if that happens. And let's just pretend, to make this cooler, let's just pretend that this is a result because there's a vampire feeding on me during the night or whatever. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, Dracula, A Love Tale. Spoiler review and analysis. I've been waiting to talk about this movie since last September when it first really started making the rounds on TikTok. So, I want to get into it. But let's talk about the title change first. I saw it in theaters, and yeah, it's confirmed that in the US they are referring to it as just Dracula, and that really pisses me off because, as I kind of ranted about on Twitter, it's false advertising. This is not a Dracula movie. There is no real horror element to it. There's horror aspects, yes, but that's not the main point. This is a gothic romance, dark fantasy with Dracula in it. So, while originally when I heard the subtitle of A Love Tale, I was kind of like, oh, that sounds kind of corny, but in time I was like, no, it's honest. Even if it does kind of sound like a Gravitas Ventures or Asylum movie title, it's honest about what it is, and I appreciate that. And I gotta feel for people who have been going in this movie going, well, it's a Dracula movie, but they put the romance on it. So it's like, yeah, because it took a very French approach to the matter. So, yeah. I don't know why the US decided to do that, but I also kind of do know because, moolah, gotta get the money. But also they released it at Valentine's Day, so it's kind of like, pick a lane, people? Do you want them to come for the Dracula or come for the love story? Whatever. Anyway, so right off the bat, I want to talk about the main couple of this film, Prince Vlad and Princess Elisabeta. Awesome name, by the way. So, I've seen people criticize its driving narrative force, saying things like, A, the love between Vlad and Elisabeta wasn't entirely well established, as it seems far more lustful than loving, and B, because of said lust, what is it exactly that made her soul pure to him? And on that note, where the hell did he get the notion she'd be reincarnated for said purity? First off, let me guess. Those latter people are the same types asking where the ice came from in Edward Scissorhands. An element that's clearly been established to be inside a bedtime story that a grandmother is telling her grandchild. It's the same situation in Dracula. When Vlad first mentions the pure souls can be reincarnated bit, it's as he, an ancient count, is about to launch into his 400-year life story that he's reciting to a captive Frenchman inside a castle inhabited by living gargoyle creatures. In other words, it's part of the charm of what is clearly a story removed from reality. You're allowed to wonder about it, sure, but you shouldn't cite it as a criticism. I mean, come on, where is people's whimsy and extension of disbelief gone lately? Or, I think I meant to write suspension of disbelief. I wrote extension, but whatever. Same thing. So, I just said a bat. Wow, really getting to the vampire spirit. So, about Vlad and Elisabeta. From what I can gather, they're clearly still within the honeymoon phase of their relationship, and one that is fully known by their castle staff. Elisabeta's maidservants secretly spy on their hookups, undoubtedly out of gossip and intrigue, and Vlad's soldiers have to somewhat exasperatingly pull him away and remind him of his primary duty as warrior, protector, and their leader. I'd even argue that we're meant to see the initial delivery of her "take care of yourself, my king" line in his men's viewpoint, like it's something they've heard numerous times before, so it sounds rehearsed some at this point, as it carries almost none of the emotional weight as it does between Vlad and Mina privately when she recalls it later on, because to the two of them, it's everything. Even the moment that seems to back up the reveal of Elisabeta being pregnant also exists purely between the two of them, as Vlad's eyes never leave his wife as the final preparations are made to his armor, and in the background, she has her hands on her stomach in a way that appears to wordlessly deliver the news to him, the camera then lingering on him as he seemingly absorbs the news before kissing her a final time. Because they're a couple contending with a war, the opening montage also gives me the impression that they waste no time in making the most of every moment they have together. They never know when such private time will be their last, particularly where Vlad is concerned, and that type of intensity and uncertainty within their love causes them to fluctuate between adult love, their hookups, and childlike love, their play-fighting and general merrymaking. The only real quiet time we see between them is when we get the first instance of Elisabeta's fascination with fire as Vlad holds her, appearing to take place late into the night, which is then quickly followed up by them sneaking in one last hookup before Vlad is set to leave in the morning. Now, as far as Elisabeta herself goes, yes, we do largely see her/know her from Vlad's perspective, so for him to call her pure is set squarely within his viewpoint. But if we look a little deeper, as she watches him dress for battle, she remarks, "Is this war necessary? Can we all live in peace as God intends for us?" Which indicates this is a battle she doesn't want for anybody involved, not just her husband and his men. And while he seems not to respond initially and merely insists on how she is, quote, his reason for being, it turns out he did in fact take her words to heart, because he says to the bishop during his blessing scene, "The dead will number in the thousands. Are you sure God's wills this?" So from this link between scenes, we can gather that she, A, is someone Vlad actively listens to, B, he believes in her wisdom enough that it makes him wonder if there isn't an alternative to God's plan, and C, perhaps the purity he sees in her comes from the notion of recognizing her as a woman of peace and civility in the face of his own war and violence. Plus, in his conversation with the bishop, he alludes to Elisabeta being the representation of all the love he has in his life, given his later statement to Jonathan Harker about how, quote, "living without love is the greatest disease of all, my friend." Regardless of how cringe you yourself might find that line to be, he probably thinks that her ability to give and provide love, especially in the face of such bloodshed, adds to her purity as well. Ugh. So when she dies, and by his own hand no less, when he was trying to protect her and their child from the enemy, which initially I actually tried to give him the benefit of the doubt by rewatching a few times over, but it's been outright confirmed he's the one who stabbed her, so much for that. But I wonder also if he felt as though it came not just as a betrayal, but as a punishment. Elisabeta for daring to wonder if there couldn't be peace instead, and him for daring to wonder if she was right. And to be fair, even the bishop calls her a, quote, a good Christian and a pure soul, despite him also insisting that God doesn't perform reincarnation, so that probably also propelled Vlad to think so and hold on to the notion of her returning to him throughout his grief. So, how did I feel about Caleb Landry Jones as Dracula? Oh, that was a journey. When I first learned that Caleb Landry Jones would be playing Dracula, I'll be honest, he would not have been my top choice for the role. Hell, he wouldn't even crack my top 20. I was so used to at this point of Dracula being played by distinguished, classy, old Hollywood-looking actors that I thought his face would be far too soft and youthful to buy as Dracula. But I will also be the first person to admit how wrong I was to doubt him. But seriously, by the time I was done watching, I was like, okay, Caleb, I am so sorry. Let me get on my knees right now and apologize profusely. Yes, he is youthful, but Caleb works it to his advantage. Caleb's Prince Vlad comes off as a young man forced into war and carnage, thrust into the role of holy warrior, but at his core, it is not the path he would have chosen. Again, recall how his men have to physically pull him away from his wife to get him dressed in his armor. Because of which, in the initial scene where he's blessed by the bishop before battle, you see how uncertain he is, relying solely on faith and still seeking guidance from religious higher-ups. However, he also still wants to give the impression of a strong leader to his men, because when the bishop prompts Vlad to voice his one request of God, He glances back at the soldier stationed at the back of the room behind him, stands closer, then leans in to confess how he fears that he couldn't go on if Elisabeta were to be taken. He even chooses without hesitation to abandon facing what looks to be the Ottoman prince, from what I can gather, and instead chase after a fleeing Elisabeta when he's alerted to her caravan being ambushed. So when the one person who reminds him that he is more than just brute violence is taken from him, in the midst of battling the very thing he questioned fighting against, but doing so if it meant keeping her alive, and by the enemy she didn't even want to be fighting, we could even see her pleading against the encroaching soldier who was going to, stab her. It comes to him as a betrayal of his faith and duty, of the commitment he has given unto God, and now nothing to him is certain anymore. And without love or faith to hold on to, he becomes a force to be reckoned with, refusing to let the bishop dictate his actions, and instead allow his fury and grief to consume him into its own almighty curse, but to the point of being refused the death he originally requested in order to rejoin Elisabeta if she died, which forces him to endure the loneliness and despair that it brings. Which does align nicely with what Luc Besson intended for the curse. Quote, "The idea of eternal life as a terrible condition when separated from the love of one's lost spouse." And I was like, okay, yeah. Now how does he fare for the rest of the film as he transitions from the ancient count that Jonathan meets to the magnetic young prince that Mina meets? Oh, Jesus. Whoops. Oh boy, he is fantastic. Yeah, where was I? Yes. He's able to be two completely different characters, but without feeling like they come from two different movies. I'm legitimately blown away by it. Compared to Gary Oldman, whose older Dracula still closely resembles the original Vlad enough that I wouldn't call his youth renewal especially mystifying, no offense. Caleb's Dracula looks unrecognizable compared to Vlad, complete with an almost 180 demeanor change. With Jonathan, he is sassy and bitter, an ancient and elderly man worn down by the world while being no less powerful and authoritative. But at the same time, you get the impression he appreciates having someone to unburden his immortal life story onto when Jonathan makes it his last request. But when Elisabeta last returns to him in the form of Mina, you can literally see the reinvigoration build up in his eyes as he absorbs the locket and remembers her words. I'd even argue it's almost akin to Grandpa Joe realizing Charlie found a golden ticket in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, only instead of a happy dance, his reaction is 10 times weirder. The best way I can describe it is throat-gasming. Like, he literally he just goes, it's very weird. I was like, what the hell is he doing? I related to Jonathan's reaction, who's just sitting there going, and I'm like, dude, same. I don't know what he's doing either. This will not be the first Charlie and the Chocolate Factory comment I make in this video. Oh, excuse me. Jesus. I burped. After leaving Jonathan to start making plans to reunite with Mina, props to him for not only keeping Jonathan alive in his gratitude, but for actually wanting to stay true to that promise later on, even if, keeping him in prison there is not really that much better, but props anyway, he tried. He concludes the scene with, "Elisabeta, I found you!" Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, he goes, "Elisabeta, I found you!" And the absolute relief in his voice already begins softening the scratchy hoarseness of old man Dracula to the lighter, more naturally low voice of Vlad. And when he does become Vlad again, not only do I have to give props for the pan-up shot reveal of his new younger self, because all I could think of was, whoa, hello, presence, but he really does convey the impression of a man who waited centuries to see his beloved, especially in the "it's her" scene as made famous by TikTok. Just the shock, wonder, then tears in his eyes as he takes in her image, alive and making her way towards him, combined with a more haunting, distant, and at one point even choral version of their theme music, makes you feel like you're truly witnessing a hidden miracle amongst this crowded room of unknowing patrons. I think the only previous version that in any way comes close to the emotional gorgeousness of the scene would be when Jonathan Rhys-Meyers Dracula, reacting to first spotting Jessica Degao's Mina in the short-lived NBC Dracula show from 2013, which, at the time, I was not allowed to watch. Not really sure why. I don't know, maybe it's because Lucy was a gay in that one, I don't know. Then, over the course of the preceding carnival montage, at multiple points, Caleb gives Vlad an enduring boyishness previously unseen up to this point, like the delight on his face touching the alpacas walking by, the way his hair goes in his face when he bashfully declines partaking in the bottle knockdown game, or when he swoops in to lead Mina out of the haunted house attraction in a playful, adventurous gesture. From it, I got the sense that he can at last appreciate the little frivolities the world has to offer again, with his love existing in it once more, especially at a time when they aren't living through a war anymore. Juxtapose this with his earlier acting as the elderly Count, and it's astounding how well he manages to portray all these varying layers to Dracula's emotional arc without it coming off too extreme for one side or the other. It feels both instantaneous and seamless, and well superseded my previously low expectations. Added bonus points for getting to go from human boyfriend Frank in the 2012 vampire film Byzantium to playing straight-up Dracula, and of all the romanticized Draculas, being the one with the most blanketed Phantom of the Opera vibes this far, with the inclusion of the music box. Again, I think he's only been rivaled by Jonathan Rhys-Meyers' version because someone literally made a Phantom of the Opera style trailer using the Dracula 2013 footage. I have it in my Phantoms of the Opera playlist if you want to check that out. So, now we get to the rest of the main cast. Christoph Waltz made for an enjoyable presence as the priest. Literally just his name, he's got no other name. Although I wouldn't call him my favorite interpretation of a Van Helsing type character. I do, however, enjoy how blasé and unbothered he was by all the vampire goings-on. Hard to say. Treating it as simply a job to be accomplished and then casually piecing out once it was done. He's just like, yeah. He's like, the curse is over. We are good. I can go now. Peace. Matilda De Angelis as Maria de Montebello is easily the second most memorable performance in this film after Jones, and she was clearly having a ball in this role, injecting a welcome and campy energy to every scene she was in. I've been intrigued by the idea of what a Lucy Renfield combo character would look like when I first heard about it, and I liked what was done with her. But she also deserved better. An Italian noblewoman that Dracula turned to vampirism a century ago to help him find his beloved, and from the looks of it, she was one of the only ones to actively enjoy being bitten. But you also get the impression she genuinely enjoyed being Mina's friend, and that it was never just a duty to her. I'm very much of the Vlad x Mina x Maria polycule thruple ship. Ewan Zabit as Jonathan Harker kind of becomes irrelevant after the first act, but he did make me sympathize with Jonathan's plight at the castle, as I found him genuinely endearing in his eagerness to speak with Dracula over dinner, remarkably brave in the face of Dracula's true nature when he's first captured, and I give him props for using his request to hear Dracula's life story as a means of learning how to win his favor, then revealing his engagement to the Count upon figuring that it's love. It's not his fault that Mina turned out to be the dearly departed wife that the Count spent centuries searching for. Then there's Zoe Blue as Princess Elisabeta / Mina Murray, whom I think has been unfairly labeled with the Nepo baby and Instagram face accusations. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm not on Instagram myself, but I really don't look to see if an actress is considered too modern to be inside a period piece or not. I just wanted to be styled to fit into its atmosphere and give a good performance. I mean, people were saying the same thing about Lily Rose Depp before Nosferatu premiered initially, and look how well she did in that role. And that is also where I got this t-shirt. I got this at Comic-Con before Nosferatu 2024. I like that. Very nice. Regarding Zoe Blue, she brings a regality and confidence to Elisabetta that is plain to see in the way she first steps out in her gorgeous dress and headpiece, and when she steps back into that role during the final act to call Vlad to her and assure him of their love. Then as Mina, she evokes the familiar stroke of a soft-spoken heroine who feels out of place in her society and yearns for something more, which I can safely say I still don't tire of seeing being done in various contexts. And I like watching it offset against Matilda's more upbeat performance, especially during the Mina Maria scenes. Though this is another instance of Mina's role taking a backseat to Dracula as the main event, I still think Zoe does a good job at making me feel for her character, particularly in her upset at learning about Vlad and Maria's vampirism after their fun night at the carnival, or when she softly recites her final words to Vlad with tears in her eyes as a realization of its meaning hits her. More water. Now, obviously, I very quickly took note of all the visual inspo / oding / possibly ripping off from the Francis Ford Coppola movie. In fact, that was actually one of the things that initially turned me off to this movie in the first place before curiosity got the better of me. However, I do give this film props that it does make some improvements against that movie. So I definitely want to address the several major story improvements that this movie made, which helped to both elevate and justify its existence in my mind. Number 1. We get more of an idea of Vlad and Elisabeta's marriage in this movie than we do in Coppola's, where there she's less of a character and more just an important presence in Dracula's former life. Even if it didn't quite work for every viewer, at least it's there. Number 2. Vlad anticipates her reincarnation from the beginning, so by making it the sole focus of the plot instead of just a side inclusion, it changes the whole structure of his motivation and depiction. Number 3. Because her reincarnation is his motivation, Vlad stays true to his beloved and only makes other vampires with the sole purpose of helping find her. No brides or side pieces as far as we can tell, and even if the dance montage shows him enjoying some of the attention that the perfume attracts, it appears to amuse him more than anything else. Then quickly juxtaposes it with his disgruntlement as he realizes just how arduous of a search it's turning out to be for him. Number 4. It is implied that Mina and Elisabeta truly are one and the same, and in her introductory monologue to the priest and Dr. Dumont, we learn she has retained some recollection of that former life even before meeting Vlad, to the point she wonders if she even belongs in her time, and his presence only begins to exacerbate it. Whereas in Coppola's film, Mina seems relatively content, and since the echoes of Elisabeta don't come until she meets Dracula, it's unclear whether they're really hers or if he's just hypnotizing her to think so. Then there's the matter of the ending that seems to show his spirit reunite with Elisabeta, which also implies her and Mina were separate beings after all. Number 5. Maria is an associate of Vlad's long before she meets Mina, and again, we have the added benefit of seeing her be the only one to actively enjoy being turned into a vampire, so the movie isn't expecting us to root for someone who openly attacks and or assaults Mina's close friend at the same time he's courting her, as Maria is basically trying to court her too. So, props to this movie for all that. Now let's talk about those frickin' gargoyles. Probably the least effectual inclusion and the biggest source of the film's total confusion are those frickin' CGI gargoyle helpers inside Dracula's castle. To be honest, the concept isn't inherently bad, as you could have used them to play around with Dracula's powers a bit and claim he learned witchcraft or something during his 400 years, then decided to enchant them as a way to help placate his loneliness. Hell, it could even be used as another side of his "F you" attitude towards his former Christian devotion. The problem is in how they end up being utilized. They're designed far more cutesy instead of fearsome, and in their first appearance, they immediately throw off the initial unsettlement caused by Jonathan's capture and just plain confuse you. Following this, there's zero explanation for them in the film whatsoever, which is only made more confusing by the fact that they turned into bald-headed kids at the end. In the words of the great Phantom reviewer, what the hell was that? I read last week how, in a way, Luc Besson sees the movie as closer to the 1991 Disney animated Beauty and the Beast than Dracula, which does more or less explain the purpose of the gargoyles, as well as Hunchback 1996, if we're being perfectly honest. But personally, I think they're far closer to the hunting beagles that were inexplicably transformed into chibi dog gremlins from the 2014 French live-action Beauty and the Beast, directed by everyone's favorite Silent Hill discourse podster, Christophe Gans, as they're both totally consistent to the rest of their respective stories. Certainly unlike how, for example, the 1986 canon movie Tales Beauty and the Beast took the living statue heads from the 1946 Cocteau, La Belle et la Bête, gave them full bodies, then had them come to life and dance with beauty for a fun musical number. Like, that was a fun way to homage and still make it work within the movie and make it your own. That didn't really happen here with the gargoyles. My dad probably said it best when he asked me if I'd ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because to him, the gargoyles turning into kids look like that movie's ending when everyone's wandering out of the mothership looking dazed and confused. So you can take that one to the bank. Just say, yep, this is a Close Encounters of the Third Kind situation, as proclaimed by my dad. I've seen people try to suggest things like how these might have been kids that Vlad managed to save and preserve from the plague, especially in the wake of losing his own child, but again, as it goes unexplained in the film, these are just theories. Like, now that you could question. It's like, of all things, it's like, you're gonna question why he thinks about the whole reincarnation thing and is so sold on that idea when these freaking gargoyles exist and that doesn't have an explanation? Like, that's weird. That's the part you should be wondering about. No going, what do you want it with the reincarnation? It's like, really? Priorities, people. Oh, and one last thing regarding the gargoyles. With the popular comparison of Caleb Landry Jones to Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka, to the point that my dad was actually able to notice with zero prompting and even added how Dracula's worldwide journey for his perfume reminded him of Wonka traveling the world for exotic candy flavors. LMAO, thanks, Dad. I've decided this movie should have just gone all the way and make the gargoyles into Vlad's Oompa Loompas, complete with musical number. After all, would have given them more to do in the movie than what they actually get, which is next to nothing. So last week, I sat down and within minutes came up with a verse to the tune of Augustus Gloop that I'm pretty proud of at this point, and I kind of want to share it with you guys. I just hope me having a cold doesn't fuck this up. Here we go. Dracula, he's been searching for his princess. Dracula, Prince of Wallachia, his grief abounds in excess. Come on, we cry, the time is right. Your fiancé looks like his dead wife. But don't, dear Jonathan, be alarmed. Mina Murray will not be harmed. Mina Murray will not be harmed. Da 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 da. I was so proud of that, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, but I can at least tell you that it comes Dad approved, because I shared it with him after his Wonka observation, and it quickly got him laughing, going, he's like, honey, that's amazing, did you write that down and post it? Which, I did, so, yay. But that right there is a perfect Subway? Oh my god. Well, I guess it is almost lunchtime, so segue, not Subway. I'm sorry. I guess I'm hungry. Perfect segue into my next point. Danny Elfman's score. What to say about it that hasn't already been said? There's a reason why Rotten Tomatoes outwardly mentions it as one of the best parts of the movie in its critical sum-up. Yes, it's safe to say that it's very much in line with his Tim Burton shtick. But as a gothic romance dark fantasy film, it's kind of hard to go wrong with him there if that's what you're aiming for. I was surprised to see two separate people say that between this movie and Send Help, apparently some people thought he, quote, hasn't had a good score in a while, and that these are a sign that he's coming back. So no love for Wednesday or Multiverse of Madness with you people? Damn. I suppose not everyone noticed a sexy guitar riff and a cup of tea during Wanda's dreamwalking, and that's unfortunate for you. Aside from that, I'm going to try to keep this section to things you're most likely to hear only from me. Like, for instance, how this specific score has apparently alerted me to the fact that I've listened to too much music in my life. I would definitely say there's some Wojciech Kilar influence in the more intense pieces, particularly in the violin stings, because you never really forget the first time you hear his iconic The Beginning from the Coppola movie, or, better known as da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I definitely heard reminders of that here, and chances are that might have been intentional. As is the similarities to some of Elfman's previous work, like, say, Sleepy Hollow, for instance. However, I also heard music that made me think of my own personal taste and faves included in the creatively and emotionally effective music playlist I've amassed over the last decade. The dance made me think of Dance of the Damned by Australian composer Peter Gundry, who's become pretty well known on YouTube for his fun masquerade-themed pieces in particular. The opening piano of Carnival reminded me a lot of the piano in Voloma by Italian composer Fabrizio Parolini. It's fun to say. And the strangest and most random of all, Music Box awakened to me a dormant memory of the 29-second intro to the Canadian paranormal documentary show Ghostly Encounters, which used to air in the US on the Biography Channel. No clue where that one came from, but something about its low, nearly ominous trumpet horn measure reminded me of the horn opener for Ghostly Encounters. I don't know why, but it was just one of those things where I was going, oh, what does this remind me of? Oh, and I was like thinking about it, and then it just hit me, and I was like, where the hell did that come from? Believe me, I am not trying to insinuate anything here, aside from maybe the Kilar influence being on purpose. I'm only saying that these are all musical connections that made my viewing that much more fun and personal to me. And because of the amount of times I've listened to the score, I've actually had the pleasure of helping a couple people out with it who had questions, like gently correcting someone who assumed a piano cover of Music Box was Eternal Love when it was in fact the former, and telling another guy who was waiting to hear the music on the big screen that his favorite track from the time period search montage was The Dance. Makes me even prouder to have been dubbed, quote, the first true Elfman geek in the comments so far on Haunted Hippie's Dracula review earlier this week. What can I say? In the words of Madame Giry, I have been well taught. No, the Phantom of the Opera did not teach me how to like Danny Elfman. It's my mother, okay? Jesus. Don't get your brains going in that direction. I don't know the Phantom. I'd like to, but I don't. Which brings me to another major plot point from the score for me personally. I've said this already in a short I filmed on my channel last September, but I shall say it again. It proves just how badly the world needs to see this man score for a Phantom of the Opera movie. He's done Dracula now, so tell me, when is it Eric's turn, huh? When does he get a little taste of that? Come on, Danny. The world is waiting. Oh, yeah, like this? I found this at Walmart last Christmas. Anyway, I kind of just want to show that off and have an excuse. But anyway. Especially since this movie makes a point of showing that it is music that largely binds Vlad and Elisabeta together, with him utilizing her impressively preserved music box to awaken Mina's memory. Yes, I've since found out that the music box memory trigger for reincarnated love may be due to Dracula specifically, but is not new to vampire media in general. As it too notably originated inside the famous soap opera Dark Shadows, both in its original 60s incarnation and its 90s revival. Ironically, it was not used inside Tim Burton's 2012 feature-length adaptation, so this is the first time we're hearing Danny Elfman musically interpret the concept. Little nerdy fun fact for you if you want to know. But of course, given how the film is largely set in Paris, naturally my first thoughts drifted to Phantom, and even more so now with the recent discovery of Luc Besson being a producer and distributor for A Monster in Paris, a 2011 French animated film known for its heavy Phantom of the Opera influence. Plus, there's the notion of what is arguably the most Phantom-like scene in the film. Once alone in her room at the boarding house she's staying in, Mina finds herself drawn to the music box after being gifted it by Vlad and starts to play it. It leads to a beautiful montage cutting between Elisabeta and Mina's separate embrace of the music, while the past and present versions of Vlad are used as a transitional device between the two, showing that while her soul may have been altered, his remains the same since the beginning. She then wakes up to realize Vlad has entered the room with her in that time, being quite literal about the music summoning him to her side, which was like, heh. And she gasps in shock before backing away and trying to keep distance between the two of them, and we quickly gather that he came in through the window via her balcony. And all I could think the first time I saw the scene was, what in the Beneath It Will the Sky intro? Because minus the flashbacks, it's the exact same setup to Christine and Eric's reunion inside Love Never Dies. Complete with a symbolic music box, or in this case, in the case of this movie, a musical toy of impending ominousness that was gifted to her child. And yes, that also counts for the fact that Vlad appears courtesy of some epic Danny Elfman music, because Remembering is definitely one of my favorites from the score. I mean, someone already made an epic version out of that theme already, so that tells you something. And Eric appears in this movie, pro shot, whatever, to what we're supposed to take as Andrew Lloyd Webber music, but as I learned 2 months ago, it was also once technically Elfman's as well. Yeah. Go watch my video jumping down that rabbit hole if you want to know more. Alrighty. Now, let's associate with the title of this video. Similar vibes and choices to Phantom of the Opera 2004. Now that we're on the subject of Phantom of the Opera, I saw someone on Reddit say last month that Dracula Love Tale feels like the next-gen version of the 2004 Phantom of the Opera movie directed by Joel Schumacher. My baby, this one. And as someone who fancies herself a bit of an expert on that film at this point, I was intrigued. And after letting the comparison sit with me a bit, I realized that's the perfect description for this movie's vibe. Right off the bat, Dracula Love Tale and Phantom 04 are both based on and or inspired by previously famous adaptations. The 1992 Coppola movie and the Andrew Lloyd Webber stage musical, respectively, even if Luc Besson won't openly own up to the former, and are transformed into what I've come to refer to as soft goth movies, where there's still a sense of gothic to be had with them, but they dial even further back on the horror, and are so dressed up in bright colors and spectacular opulence to make the central tragic romance angle feel that much more grand and sweeping. Both films also notably toe the line between fantasy and realism, to the point they're a bit confused on what they're going for. For example, in Love Tale, Vlad's powers of persuasion are given a scientific method with a potent perfume he spends several years constructing, yet he has animated gargoyles living inside his castle. In Phantom 04, we see the exact mechanics that Eric manipulated to lead to the chandelier crash, and yet, when Christine is led through the mirror for the first time, it results in a bizarre fantasy sequence that, even when you're told later it wasn't real, still confuses you on the basis of its meaning. Both movies took inspiration from Beauty and the Beast, with Besson openly comparing his movie to the Disney classic, as stated, and Schumacher's movie containing visual references to both the Disney and Cocteau films, as the fantasy sequence I just mentioned involves Cocteau's famous candelabra arms, or handelabras, as Kyle Calderon referred to them as. The titular monsters of Love Tale and Phantom 04 are the primary emotional focus of each story, even if they're both pretty good looking in hindsight, complete with the actors receiving clear directorial favoritism, and to the point that not everyone feels the heroines have much impact on the story, depending on who you ask, and the secondary love interests might as well not even exist. There are Italian redhead supporting characters whose actresses are having a wonderful time, and they inject a very welcome energy inside every scene they're in. Although, except in this case, Matilda De Angelis is actually Italian, and Minnie Driver's not Italian, but there's the 2004 movie makes many improvements to the stage show, too, just as this movie improves on the Coppola movie, which I happily established in the past, and you can also go check out on my channel. Oh, there's the roses, which this shirt actually ended up being way more fitting than I expected, because there's the black ribboned red roses that Schumacher added to the iconography for the 04 film, and we see the rose petals that become symbolic of Vlad and Elisabeta's love in the beginning, which is very nice. I appreciate that. And I'm sure also adds to the Beauty and the Beast connection of it all. There's pretty winter scenes, carnival montages, meaningful music boxes that have withstood the test of time and serve as important memory triggers. And the character of Dr. Dumont looks very much like Gaston Leroux to me based on pictures I've seen of him. Oh, and as a reminder, Gerard Butler in the 2004 Phantom was originally hired because Joel Schumacher saw him play Dracula, and Vlad's religious pettiness towards God in this film feels very much in the vein of butlers. And that guy was literally Judas. To the point that it makes me smile at how it makes me smile at Jones's "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Evil Spirit" blessing on the cross near rivals Butler's propaganda, sneering at the Bible. Made me very happy. It's like, aw. I was like, look at you, Gerard Butler. You might have some competition for the most religiously petty Dracula. Nice. Now I want to get to the part that really is going to have me kind of rant a little bit here at the end. The movie's ending. I'm going to cut to the chase on this one. I don't like it. Not because it was tragic, as I already anticipated it would be, / saw it confirmed on the Dracula and Mina Iris music video, but because when viewed against the rest of the movie, it feels unnecessarily cruel, particularly towards Mina. The movie takes great pains to assure the audience that Vlad's falling of her renewed soul is less creepy and more destined, with her fearing she exists inside the wrong time, complete with hers and Vlad's theme playing in the background, and how she's able to experience memories / feelings of that former life even without his influence. Most importantly, it's established she was never that close to Jonathan in the first place, caring for him but never loving him, and only accepted his proposal out of societal obligation. It is in Vlad that things finally start to make sense for Mina, and upon recognizing her prince and herself as his princess, she understandably asks him to turn her so they won't be parted again. She's brought to their castle and is ready to start a new life with him, only to have Vlad return to her after fending off the siege of their castle and tell her that if he dies, she'll be set free. She is, of course, horrified and begs him to stay with her, all while the priest outside the door is trying to convince him to go through with it, then gets trapped in their room so she can't stop him. When Zoe Blue is screaming, "No! No!" after him, I felt that. Her desperation was real. She continues to cry and beg for him not to leave her, is promptly ignored, is forced to say goodbye to him as she asks why he's doing this to her, then watches him dissolve to ashes before her eyes. No one offers her a single word of comfort. She can't even hold on to his ashes because God carries them away. The priest just F's off and leaves. I feel bad for Jonathan, too, because the poor guy was an innocent bystander in all this. And then the movie just ends there, complete with a final trail off from the music box as the heavenly light disappears and the screen goes to black. It was just like, doo, 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 doo. And, I mean, yeah, that's sad, but I always sit there just going, Danny, respectfully, please take your paycheck and go the fuck home. Like, okay, don't just pull like, it's over now, the music of Wallachia at me or some shit. It's like, okay, dude. And as sad as it is, you're also kind of just left asking, what the hell is Mina supposed to do now? Because in universe, all she's left with is the truth of being Elisabeta, but no connection to that life left to speak of. Only the grief and heartache of losing her love, plus Maria too when she finds that out eventually. Like, it's actually really messed up when you think about it. Not to mention Vlad's other vampires from around the world seeing themselves age and dissolve without warning, when chances are, if we look at how Maria had been initially faring before she got thrown in the asylum, most of them kept to themselves and lived their immortal lives unbothered. This Dracula never had a world domination plot going on. His literal only end goal was to be reunited with his wife. So, yeah, it's like, yeah, he was just kind of chill, and I think the vampires were just chill. I mean, I get that they're trying to say, like, oh, it's unnatural, the vampires aren't supposed to exist, but, like, dude, I think most of them just found a way to work with it. Oh, so in reality, it feels less tragic and more cowardly, a cop-out ending that really doesn't match up to what the rest of the film was promising. In fact, that too matches this movie up to Love Never Dies. Oh, funnily enough, and that fell over. As Andrew Lloyd Webber also went out of his way to insist to viewers that, oh, Eric and Christine were meant to be, to the point of committing multiple character assassinations for it to happen, only to have it mean jack shit when, spoilers, he kills off Christine shortly after a reconnection with Eric, which was also very sad initially, made me cry the first time I watched, but with time, you kind of just sit there going, what the hell was the point of this movie then? I mean, especially if you compare it to the first show and how effectively that ended, so, it really did make this pointless aside from looking pretty. But yeah. And this show also just sort of ends after Christine's death because it doesn't want to acknowledge the unnecessary turmoil it's left the rest of the characters in. Yeah. So Dracula, Love Tale, and Love Never Dies have that in common. Ha 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 ha. Which is funny because I think it wasn't a real poster. I think it was an edited poster or something. But I did see a Love Never Dies tagline on a Dracula Love Tale image. And it was like, oh dear. And it's fine if you don't necessarily agree with me on this. But I did have to just get that rant off my chest. Because I was just kind of like, yeah. So props to those fics that I read. The one where they did the change the ending to put a little more respect and centering Elisabeta's agency. And also the other fic that was, actually had it so that Vlad would specifically tell Elisabeta why he doesn't want to change her into a vampire. Because that was part of the kicker for why he did what he did. But it's just like, again, dude, can you blame the girl? She didn't want to be parted from you again. And then you forced her to endure being parted from you. It's like, plus the fact, also throw the fact that the line that he has her remember in her room is the I cannot survive without you. It's like, dude, and now you're asking her to survive without you? That's actually kind of fucked. That's super fucked, man. Anyway, so, yeah. I really did like this movie, even with the issues that I take with it. It's grown on me with time. I was not sure what to make of a lot of these strange plot elements and the Coppola homaging / ripping off. Although, let's be real, every Dracula that's had a romance reincarnation shit has fallen in the footsteps of that movie, and I don't know if Luc Besson actually thinks that it's part of the original story or not, because it kind of sounds like he does, which is like, no, it's not, dude. A lot of people could tell you that. But I really have grown to love this movie, and I'm really glad I was able to catch this in theaters on the big screen. Especially because the surround sound in my theater was crazy, so the score sounded even more breathtaking. I legit teared up during It's Her and Carnival just because it was all around me in the theater. So, yeah, I do think this movie is worth a watch. It's up to you whether or not you want to pay money to see it or not, because, there are ways where you don't have to do that. But I would say this is a really good movie for Valentine's Day. I think this is a great film that followed in the succession of recent monster movies that we've had. And it, as a dark fantasy film, I liked it overall. And I've watched a lot of scenes since, and plus, of course, it's always worth it for Elfman's score. Even if, again, I don't really agree with the whole, this is his first good score in a long time. Because, again, hello, Multiverse of Madness and Wednesday exist. Where the hell have you been? And, of course, my way of connecting it to Phantom of the Opera made it 10 times more enjoyable for me. So, yeah. I would also say this is probably going to turn out better than Wuthering Heights, so. Oh, God, excuse me. Ugh. I mean, you ask me to pick. It's like dark fantasy vampire movie or bodice ripper that completely goes against its original source material. I'm going to choose the Dracula film, because at least that's a fantasy movie, and again, the reincarnated love thing may not have been a Dracula thing. It's actually always been a mummy thing, and then they just took it for Dracula, and that goes against the story. At least it's kind of enough in the media at this point that you kind of just go with it. So yeah, clearly my sinuses are saying, girl, in this video, I've been held on long enough, so I'm just gonna go. I hope you guys have a happy Friday the 13th, happy Valentine's Day, and I'm gonna go get over this cold.